Why was the bar so quiet, when just moments before it had been alive with laughter and clinking glasses? Because a question had been asked, one question that cut through the noise like a knife. What was your call sign? The Marine colonel's voice carried across the room, half challenge, half mockery. His silver hair gleamed under the dim lights, his whiskey glass raised in smug anticipation. The younger officers leaned forward, eager to see him put a stranger in her place. But the woman he addressed didn't flinch. She didn't even turn. She just sat at the far end of the bar, posture composed, eyes steady on the door, her back never exposed. Her answer came softly, so softly in fact that some might have thought they misheard. Phantom 7. And the colonel nearly dropped his glass. The silence that followed was almost unnatural, a heartbeat stretched into a lifetime. Veterans who'd been drinking in the shadows straightened instantly. One even rose to his feet without being ordered. The colonel's smirk faltered, his face draining of color. He knew, and the others knew. Everyone in that room understood that he had been taunting the wrong person. Lissa Vaughn. Though none of them said her name, it hung heavy in the air, because to those who knew or even suspected, she was something more than a soldier. She was a ghost, a survivor of missions that had never officially happened. The bar door had opened earlier that night, ushering her in with a sweep of cold air. She hadn't entered casually. She scanned the room like she always did, methodically, patiently counting exits, assessing threats, cataloging weapons within reach. Not paranoia, habit, muscle memory that never faded. She picked the far corner, the only seat that allowed her eyes to command the whole room. Even then, she wasn't fully present. Her thoughts carried her elsewhere, memories she never spoke about, faces she never allowed herself to remember too long. But her body, always vigilant, always prepared. The bartender, Zephr, had known her long enough not to ask questions. He gave her the usual, a neat whiskey, and left her in silence. He was one of the few people who understood that silence wasn't absence, it was survival. But silence rarely lasted when Colonel Abernathy Mercer was in the room. He loved to talk, loved to command attention, even outside of uniform. Tonight he had an eager audience, young officers still glowing with the shine of commission, drinking up his war stories like they were gospel. He wore his ribbon rack on a civilian blazer, as if the world might forget his service if he didn't remind them. His booming laugh carried across the bar, his voice rising with every glass. And eventually, his eyes landed on her. At first it was curiosity, the way she sat, the gear she wore, the quiet that clung to her. But then it turned to something sharper, disdain. Another contractor playing dress-up, he said loudly enough for his table to hear, but angled so she could too. The boots, the watch, the way she's sitting like she's on patrol. They love the look, they love the lingo. Never fired a shot in anger, but they'll sell it to the Pentagon at 3 times the price. Some of the younger officers chuckled nervously. Others looked at her with curiosity, even pity. She didn't move, didn't acknowledge, but Zephr noticed her hand tightening around her glass. "Ignore him," the bartender muttered. "Third drink always turns him into an ass." But Mercer wasn't done. His voice grew louder, his words sharper. He wanted to provoke, he needed to. Finally, he pushed himself up and moved toward her, stopping just behind her shoulder. The entire bar seemed to shift with him, tension rippling through the air like static. "You know what gives it away?" His voice was too loud now, meant for everyone. "The way you're sitting, back to the wall, eyes on the door. You're wearing the costume, but are you the real thing?" Lissa didn't turn, not yet. She let the silence stretch. She let him drown in his own arrogance. "So what's your story?" he pressed. "Where'd you serve? What was your call sign? Or did you just buy the gear online to look the part?" Every head in the bar turned. Every breath seemed to still. The colonel was baiting a ghost and didn't know it. Finally she turned, slowly, calmly. Her eyes met his, eyes that didn't flash with anger or fear, eyes that carried weight, years of it, miles of it, blood of it, Something in that gaze made the veterans stiffen. They recognized it instantly. He smirked. "No call sign, that's what I thought." The silence was unbearable, and then she spoke. "Phantom 7. 2 words, that was all." And the room changed. The colonel's hand jerked, his whiskey glass slipping, spilling amber across his fingers. His face went pale. Around the room, veterans shifted, their spines straightening as though instinct commanded them to rise. Whispers carried without sound, shock without words. Then a new voice emerged from the shadows, steady, old, and commanding. Phantom 7 was real, Colonel, very real. Admiral Silas Thorne stepped into the light, his bearing unmistakable despite his civilian clothes. His presence silenced any lingering doubt. Even Mercer snapped instinctively to military discipline. And just like that, the power in the room shifted. "You've been addressing," Thorne said as he approached, "one of the most decorated operators in recent history. Not that you'll find her record in any public archive." Recognition flickered across the faces of those who knew enough to understand. Phantom 7 wasn't a rumor. It was a scar, a whispered name carried through classified corridors, a story officers told in hushed tones because they weren't sure it had ever been real. But here she was, flesh and blood, alive. Mercer's bravado collapsed. He straightened, stiffened, then did the only thing left when arrogance meets truth. He saluted. "Ma'am, I spoke out of line. Without knowledge, I apologize." She didn't return the salute. She wasn't in uniform, and the look on her face wasn't triumph. It wasn't satisfaction. It was something else. A weariness so deep it seemed to hollow the air around her. "We're all just trying to enjoy a quiet drink, Colonel." The words carried no malice, just fatigue. The tension eased. Slowly, conversation returned, though hushed, respectful. A new gravity filled the bar. The young Lieutenant Wren offered her a fresh drink and whispered, "Thank you for your service." Lissa smiled faintly. "Take care of your people, Lieutenant. That's the only thanks we ever need." But inside, something was stirring, something heavier than the silence of a bar. She knew Mercer's outburst had cracked open a door she'd tried to keep closed. Her past was resurfacing, and with it came the shadows she'd spent years outrunning. Outside, rain streaked the pavement, and in its rhythm she heard the echo of old ghosts. And as dawn approached, she would learn what she already suspected. Phantom 7 was being hunted. And she was next. What was it about those 2 words that could silence an entire room? Phantom 7. For most, it was just a name, a rumor, a ghost story whispered in military circles, never written down, never confirmed. But for the ones who knew, the ones who had seen, it was a truth too heavy to carry. And for Lissa Vaughn, it was a truth she had lived. That night the bar emptied slowly. Respect carried her space like an invisible shield. No one intruded. No one asked questions. But their silence was louder than any applause. Drinks appeared near her hand without being ordered, each one a quiet offering of gratitude. Veterans passed with nods, small acknowledgements that meant more than words. Zephr, the bartender, lingered near, polishing a glass that didn't need polishing. At one point, he placed a challenge coin on the bar, the kind that should not exist, from an operation that never happened. "Been carrying it a long time," he murmured. She touched its edge with her fingertip, eyes distant. "It always costs too much." Hours later, rain slicked the parking lot. The night was thinning, a pale gray lining the horizon. That's when she saw him waiting, a figure who belonged to the shadows, though the government plates on his SUV betrayed official weight. Admiral Thorne. He stood straighter in the damp air, his age worn but not broken. He didn't waste words. "They're eliminating Phantom 7 operators, one by one." Lissa didn't react outwardly, but inside the truth settled like ice. She had suspected, felt the eyes on her, watched the shadows stretch too long across familiar streets. "Dashel," she said softly, "Paraguay." Thorne nodded grimly. And Ara, Geneva, convenient heart attacks official records say, but the timing. Too neat. The Admiral studied her face, the way her jaw tightened, the way her eyes remained steady even as loss echoed in her voice. The Pentagon wants to bring you in. Protective custody. She laughed once, humorless. There's no protection from this, Admiral, not even from inside. Rain traced down her jacket, down her face, though she would never call it tears. Not anymore. Then what's your play? She looked past him toward the horizon where dawn was breaking. Her voice was low, steady. Find the rest of the team, find who's hunting us, and remind them why ghosts should be feared. She walked into the storm, shoulders squared, phone already in hand. A message tapped into encrypted channels. Ghost protocol initiated. Behind her, Admiral Thorne watched, knowing she would not stop. Could not. Phantom 7 was never built to surrender. But he also knew something else. She wasn't just hunted, she was bait. And somewhere in the drizzle across the street, another figure watched, whispering into a device only he could hear. Confirmed, Phantom 7 is active again. The hunt had begun. Her apartment no longer felt like home. It was a shell. A place to sleep, a place to hide the tools of a life she had tried to leave behind. She swept it carefully, room by room, corners, vents, closets. No breaches, no surveillance, not yet. The hidden panel in her bookshelf clicked open under practiced hands. Inside, an unmarked laptop, not registered, not traceable. It hummed to life beneath layers of encryption. A message typed. Dashiell and Ara confirmed down. Rendezvous at Echo Point in 72 hours. Her fingers erased the evidence. No trace, no footprint. The laptop sealed back into the wall, vanishing like it had never existed. Then the safe. Her hands pressed the code, the familiar resistance of steel unlocking. Inside. A passport with a name she had never used. Credentials forged years ago. A weapon customized for precision, for inevitability. And a photograph. She allowed herself exactly 30 seconds to look at it. 6 figures, faces half hidden, standing before a helicopter under foreign skies. A team once unbreakable. Phantom 7. She placed the photo back, closed the safe, and carried only what she needed. Shower change, neutral clothing, nothing memorable, travel-ready, always ready. She caught her reflection in the mirror, the scars across her shoulder, down her back, the ones no uniform ribbon could ever explain. She touched them briefly, not in pity, not in pride, but in recognition. Proof of survival, proof of failure. Both lived on the same skin. The knock came just as dawn broke, sharp, precise, military. Weapon in hand, she approached silently, checked the peephole. Lieutenant Octavia Wren, from the bar, in civilian clothes. Impossible, no one should know this address. I know you're in there, Wren said softly through the door. Admiral Thorne sent me. I'm carrying a message that couldn't be transmitted electronically. Caution Ward with instinct. Could it be a trap? Could it be another layer in the hunt? Lissa cracked the door, chain still engaged. Her eyes locked on Wren's, cold, searching. Cairo goes dark at midnight, Wren said. The phrase hung heavy, a code from a mission years ago. One only Thorne and Phantom 7 would know. The chain slid free. The door opened. Wren stepped inside. She handed over a small drive. The Admiral said I'm assigned as your liaison. He thought you might need someone who can still move through official channels. Lissa didn't take the drive immediately. Her eyes scanned the lieutenant, assessing posture, tone, intent, looking for lies. Liaison means asset, Lissa said finally. Her voice was calm but edged. Do you know what that means, Lieutenant? Once you step into this shadow, there's no stepping back into the light. Wren's chin lifted. Her voice was steady, though her youth still clung to it. With respect, ma'am, I made my choice when I delivered that message. Admiral Thorne told me what's happening. Operators eliminated, clearance compromised, extreme risk. I know what I signed up for. Lissa studied her, saw no fear in her eyes, only something else, something harder. My father, Wren added quietly, was General Marcus Wren. The name cut through Lissa like a blade. She remembered him, the architect of classified programs that pushed boundaries others feared to touch. A man whose death had been labeled a heart attack, though whispers always said otherwise. He told me, Wren continued, that if I ever crossed paths with Phantom 7, I should trust them with my life. He said you were the best operators this country ever produced, and that you'd been betrayed by the very people you protected. Lissa was silent, weighing, watching. The words carried too much truth to be coincidence. Finally she took the drive. Sit. Wren obeyed. Lissa's voice softened just slightly. From this moment on, you have no official sanction. If we're compromised, the government will disavow you. Best case, your career ends. Worst case, she didn't finish. She didn't need to. Wren's reply came without hesitation. I understand. Lissa's eyes lingered on her, measuring, testing. Then stop calling me ma'am. Lissa will do. We're not in a chain of command anymore. Wren nodded. A flicker of something passed between them, not trust, not yet, but recognition. Lissa checked her watch. Time moved quickly now. I have a flight in 3 hours. You have until then to pack essentials. Settle what you can. From here forward, no electronics, no cards, cash only. Burn your phone, understand. Wren straightened, understood. Lissa walked her to the door, pressed a small device into her hand, a panic button, direct line to Thorn. If you ever doubt me, Lissa said, her tone cold, sharp, you use this. And you assume everyone, including me, is hostile until proven otherwise. Wren met her gaze. Will 3 hours be enough for you to verify I'm not a threat? Lissa almost smiled. Almost. I'll never be sure you're not a threat. That's how I've stayed alive this long. Airports are perfect hunting grounds. Anonymous crowds, constant movement, disguises that blend in with ease. Zurich International buzzed with travelers, none of them paying attention to 2 women moving separately through the terminal. One in a blazer, one in civilian jeans. No eye contact, no acknowledgement, 6 paces apart. The flight to Istanbul was only the first step, a false trail. They boarded separately, sat apart, never glancing toward each other. By the time they reached Bucharest 18 hours later, their patterns had looped and twisted, shaking loose most surveillance, but not all. Lissa felt the weight of eyes, always. The cafe in the old city was small, quiet. She arrived first, corner table, sight lines mapped. Wren entered later, ordered a coffee, left a napkin under the cup. Lissa collected it, reading the faint pencil marks hidden beneath. Coordinates. A safe house. The rain had started again by the time she reached the building. A weathered stone facade. Nothing memorable, nothing dangerous, yet. 5 flights of stairs. A door marked 507. She knocked a pattern. The door opened to a wall of muscle and scars. Talon. Nikolai Risnik, former Spetsnaz, Phantom 7's close quarters hammer. Took you long enough, he said in his gravel voice, his Russian accent unsoftened by years in America. Had to make sure I wasn't bringing company. She stepped inside, scanned quickly, 2 exits, trip wires strung nearly invisible, weapons placed within reach. Talon had prepared well. Your new friend is clean, he said, nodding toward the street where Wren would be arriving soon. Had her under watch since she left the airport. No tales. Lissa arched a brow. Still have assets here. I have assets everywhere. A knock, the same pattern. Talon opened the door, weapon hidden but ready. Wren stepped in, eyes scanning the room with surprising sharpness. She noted the exits, the wires, the weapons. Her awareness exceeded her experience. Talon studied her. Your father saved my life in Kandahar before Phantom 7. He paused, looking closer. You have his eyes, same determination. The words landed heavy. And with them came something new, not trust, not yet, but acceptance. Lissa moved to the table. Show me what we know. The screens lit the room, files scattered across encrypted drives, Dashiell's last transmissions, Ara's final reports, fragments of intelligence, incomplete but damning. Surveillance patterns, strike teams, military precision, government resources. But which government? Wren asked quietly. Lissa and Talon exchanged a glance. She was sharper than she looked. Dashiell's fragments revealed something worse. A name buried in financial trails, Axiom Strategic, a private force, well-trained, well-paid, well-hidden, deniable. And worse still, one word buried in the shadows. Scimitar. And when Talon revealed the last fragment, Lissa's stomach turned cold. They're recreating Tyrann. Her silence said enough. A weapon that should have never existed, a system designed to kill selectively, cleanly. But it hadn't been clean, it had been a massacre. The truth was undeniable. The ghosts of Tyrann had returned. And Phantom 7 was being erased, one operator at a time. The laptop chimed, a new message, Spectre and Wraith compromised, Odessa in 36 hours. The net was tightening. And even as they packed, even as they prepared, Lissa felt it in her blood. They weren't escaping, not yet. They were already surrounded. Why did the street feel too quiet? Wren followed 3 blocks behind, just as Lissa had instructed. The rain-slicked cobblestones gleamed under the orange wash of old streetlights. The city seemed alive with shadows. Every doorway, every passing pedestrian could be a threat. And Wren felt it, the hum of danger, the way silence itself pressed against her chest. Ahead, Lissa slowed. Her movements looked casual, but they were. Wren recognized it now, situational control. The deliberate placement of steps, the pause to catch reflections in a shop window, the faint tilt of her head that meant she was scanning. Wren had been trained, yes, but training was a map. Lissa was the terrain. And then it happened. Lissa stopped in the middle of a narrow street, body slightly angled. 3 men stepped from the shadows, too smooth, too precise. Civilian clothes, but everything about them screamed professional. Their posture, their spacing, the way one man's shoulder brushed Lissa, as he pressed something cold and hidden against her side. Wren froze where she was. Her instincts screamed to move, to intervene. But she knew any action now meant death, for both of them. Lissa's head turned just slightly, eyes locking across the rain-slick street with Wren's. No words, just a look. Run! Wren's chest tightened. She understood the order. Every fiber of her discipline told her to obey, but something else screamed inside her. She couldn't just abandon her. Not here. Not like this. She pressed herself against the shadow of a recessed doorway, heart hammering. Lissa, meanwhile, stood calm. Her hands were raised slightly, not surrender, not submission, just control. Her voice was quiet when she finally spoke. "You're making a mistake." The man with the weapon pressed closer. "You shouldn't be alive." The words chilled. Not an insult, not a threat, a statement of fact. Another man stepped behind her, scanning the street, his gaze pausing dangerously near Wren's hiding place. She held her breath, every muscle taut. If he looked 1 second longer. But Lissa shifted her weight, drawing their eyes back. "If you knew who I was, you wouldn't be standing so close." Her tone wasn't bravado, it was truth. Quiet, sharpened truth. The leader smirked, but his grip tightened. "Orders are orders. Phantom 7 is finished." A flicker crossed her eyes. Phantom 7, always those words. A death sentence spoken like a formality. Then movement. Fast. Precise. Lissa dropped her weight, pivoted her body, and in a single fluid motion she drove her elbow into the weapon holder's wrist. The gun clattered to the street. Her other hand shot upward, palm breaking his nose with a sickening crack. Chaos exploded. The second man lunged. Lissa spun, using the first man's collapsing body as cover, wrenching his weapon free and firing once, clean into the attacker's chest. The shot echoed down the street, swallowed by rain and stone. The third drew fast, but Lissa was faster. 2 rounds sent her mass. He fell against the wall, sliding down into silence. 3 men, less than 10 seconds. Ren stood frozen, breath ragged, adrenaline burning her chest. She had seen training videos, simulations, but nothing like this. The fluidity, the economy of motion, the cold precision of a survivor who had been here before. Lissa stood over the fallen, eyes steady, breath controlled. She looked up at Ren, her voice flat. "Move." Ren obeyed, crossing the street quickly, her boots splashing through shallow puddles. She stared at the bodies, shock written plain across her face. "They weren't random," she whispered. "No," Lissa holstered the weapon. "Professionals, they knew where I'd be." Ren's eyes widened. "Then that means—" Lissa cut her off. "It means the net is already here, and if we stay, we die." The safe house no longer felt safe. Talon had weapons laid out across the table, eyes hard, jaw set. He didn't need explanation. The sound of shots had reached him, and the sight of blood on Lissa's sleeve confirmed the truth. "Compromised," he growled. Lissa nodded once. "We need to move, Odessa, now." Ren looked between them, trying to steady her breathing. Her father's words came back to her. "Trust Phantom 7 with your life." But trust was harder when death seemed to stalk every step. Talon moved quickly, packing, checking weapons. His massive frame moved with practiced efficiency. Not wasted motion. No hesitation. Lissa, though, paused, just briefly. Her gaze lingered on the photograph she had carried from her safe. Phantom 7. 6 faces blurred by time and secrecy. Now only 3 remained. Her chest tightened, not with fear, with something heavier, guilt. "Always too few," she whispered to herself. Ren noticed. She wanted to ask, wanted to understand the weight behind those words, but something told her this wasn't the moment. Some truths were wounds, and wounds weren't to be touched. They left the safe house in silence. Talon took the car. Lissa and Ren on foot, separate paths converging later. Rain fell steady, cloaking them in anonymity. But even in the anonymity, Lissa felt it. The eyes, the invisible reach of something larger, something closing. Her instincts screamed. Each step carried weight. When she turned down a narrow alley, she caught the reflection in a storefront window. A figure, too still, too deliberate. Drab. Her heart didn't quicken, her pace didn't falter. She adjusted, flowed into it. A predator sensing the net. Behind her, Ren followed protocol, 3 blocks back, watching, learning. And then the world erupted. Gunfire tore through the street, shattering glass, sending civilians scrambling. Lissa ducked low, rolling behind the cover of a stone column. Bullets ricocheted, sparking against stone. Her weapon was already in her hand. She returned fire, precise, calculated. One assailant fell. Another pressed harder, forcing her deeper into cover. She heard the panic of civilians, the chaos of a city blindsided by war it didn't understand, and beneath it all, the steady hum of pursuit. Ren had frozen for half a heartbeat, but then she moved, instincts colliding with fear. She pulled a fallen man to cover, searching for his dropped weapon. Her fingers closed around it. Cold steel, real weight. For the first time, she held more than theory, more than training. Her pulse raced. She saw Lissa pinned, returning fire in controlled bursts, and she knew, if she hesitated, it would end here. So she didn't. Ren fired, once, twice. She didn't hit, not clean, but it was enough. The attacker shifted, gave Lissa the opening. Lissa moved like lightning, breaking cover, rolling, firing. Silence fell in the alley, broken only by rain and the echo of spent shells. She turned toward Ren. For a moment their eyes met. Something passed there, not thanks, not yet, but recognition. Ren had chosen. They regrouped 2 blocks away. Talon met them with the car, engine low, eyes sharp. "Compromised," Lissa said. "I heard." His gaze flicked to Ren, nodding the weapon in her hand. His approval was subtle, but it was there. Ren exhaled, adrenaline still surging. She looked at Lissa. "They knew where you'd be. How?" Lissa didn't answer immediately. She stared out the rain-streaked window as Talon drove them into the dark. Her reflection stared back at her, tired, scarred, unrelenting. "How?" Ren pressed again. Finally Lissa spoke, quiet, heavy. "Because someone inside knows where we are, and they want Phantom 7 erased, completely." The words settled like stone. And in the silence that followed, Ren understood something she hadn't before. This wasn't just survival. This was betrayal. And betrayal was a war no training had prepared her for. That night, as the car cut through the storm toward Odessa, Lissa closed her eyes. Not to rest. Phantom 7 never rested. But to remember. Faces, voices, missions that never existed, orders that came from shadows, always shadows, and the knowledge that every secret carried a cost. Her breath slowed, her pulse steadied. And in the darkness, one truth burned clear. Phantom 7 wasn't just being hunted. They were being erased. And she would not let it happen. Why did Odessa feel more like a graveyard than a city? The car rolled into its outskirts under the weight of midnight, headlights cutting across abandoned warehouses and rusted fences. Talon drove in silence, his massive hands steady on the wheel, his eyes flicking constantly to the mirrors. Lissa sat beside him, motionless, scanning the shadows. Ren was in the back, clutching the weapon she'd taken, her knuckles white. Every bump in the road jarred her nerves. She wanted to ask questions, to break the silence that pressed down on her like a weight, but the look on Lissa's face stopped her. That face was unreadable. Not stone, not ice, something else. A mask forged over years of burying too much. The silence stretched until Talon finally broke it. "We shouldn't be here." Lissa's eyes didn't move from the window. "We don't have a choice." Odessa was the fallback. Ren leaned forward slightly. "But if Spectre and Wraith were compromised?" "Then this will be a kill zone." Talon cut her off, his tone flat. The words hung heavy. Lissa turned her head just slightly. "That's why we're here." The safe house was an old shipping office near the port, walls stained with salt, the air thick with diesel and sea rot. They entered cautiously, weapons raised, moving in practiced formation. It was empty, too empty. No signs of struggle, no signs of habitation, just dust and silence. Ren's voice cracked the quiet. "They were supposed to meet us." "Or they already did," Talon muttered darkly, scanning the corners. Lissa moved to the desk in the center of the room, papers scattered, a map pinned with coordinates, a burner phone. She picked it up, dead battery. But taped to the underside of the desk, her fingers found something small. A drive. Spectre's style, always hidden, always coded. She slid it into her pocket. They were here. "And now?" Talon asked. She didn't answer. Not yet. Her eyes had caught something else. A faint glimmer on the floor near the window. She crouched, touched it lightly. Blood. Still tacky, recent. Ren stepped closer, her voice hushed. "Then they didn't leave." Lissa straightened, not alive. The weight of that truth crushed the room. Spectre, the one who could weave systems into shadows. Wraith, the ghost of infiltration. Gone, just like Dashel, just like Ara. Ren's throat tightened. She wanted to say something, anything, but her words would feel small. She was new to this world, but she could feel the gravity of each loss. Talon slammed his fist against the wall, the sound reverberating through the room. "Four gone, only us left." "Not gone," Lissa said softly. Her hand rested against the desk, her voice low, deliberate. "Erased, and if they're erasing us, it means someone's afraid." Ren looked at her. Afraid of what? Lissa's eyes were distant, haunted. Afraid of Tyrion. They retreated deeper into the port to an abandoned warehouse Talon had prepped as a secondary fallback. This one wasn't comfortable, but it was fortified. Reinforced doors, escape routes, weapons stashed in hidden caches. Once inside, Lissa finally powered the drive. The small laptop hummed, Spectre's encryption blooming across the screen like smoke. Ren leaned in, but Talon pulled her back with one massive hand. Give her space. The data was fragmented, surveillance feeds, financial trails, notes written in Spectre's shorthand. Lissa's eyes scanned quickly, mind piecing fragments into patterns. One phrase repeated across multiple files. Scimitar. Ren's brow furrowed, the same code name from Bucharest. Lissa nodded once. Spectre confirmed it. Axiom Strategic isn't just building an army, they've acquired the Tyran protocols. Ren shook her head, but I thought Tyran was destroyed. It was supposed to be. Talon's voice was low, grim, but nothing is ever destroyed, not if it's valuable. Ren swallowed. What exactly was it? Lissa's fingers paused on the keyboard. She closed her eyes briefly, as if bracing against a memory. Then she spoke. It was meant to be clean, a precision system, target individuals based on genetic markers, a way to end threats without collateral damage. That's what they told us. Her voice hardened. But it wasn't clean, it was slaughter. The system failed, it didn't discriminate. Hundreds of civilians dead. Ren's stomach churned, and you were sent. To erase it, Talon finished. His eyes burned with the memory. Destroy the tech, extract the scientists, burn the evidence, and bury the truth. Ren whispered, and now it's back. Yes, Lissa said. Her hand tightened into a fist on the table. And now someone wants to use it. Scimitar is more than a code name, it's deployment. The storm outside intensified, rain lashing against rusted walls, thunder rolling across the sea. The three of them sat in silence, each swallowed by their own thoughts. For Ren, it was fear but also clarity. She was in the middle of something vast, something her training had never prepared her for. But beneath the fear was a spark of determination. She thought of her father, of his warnings, of his faith in Phantom 7. She would not back down. For Talon, it was rage. His massive hands flexed, his jaw clenched. He had lost too many brothers already. He had been built for war, but this was different. This was betrayal. Betrayal burned deeper than bullets. And for Lissa, it was something heavier. Not rage, not fear, something quieter. Guilt. She remembered the civilians in Tyran, the screams, the smoke. She remembered the faces of her team, one by one, falling. She remembered surviving when she shouldn't have, surviving when others hadn't. She whispered to herself, so low neither Talon nor Ren could hear. Fewer than there should be. A noise cut the silence. The faintest scrape of metal outside the door. All three froze. Talon was already moving, weapon in hand, eyes narrowed. Lissa raised a hand to stop him. She pointed to Ren, gesturing her toward cover. The lieutenant obeyed, heart hammering. The scrape came again, then a knock. 3 sharp raps, precise, military. Talon's eyes flicked to Lissa, trap. But she didn't move. She listened, counted the seconds between, listened again. Then a voice, low, calm, familiar. Admiral Thorne. Ren's eyes widened. She looked at Lissa. But Lissa didn't relax, not yet. She moved to the door slowly, her weapon ready. Her voice was steady when she spoke. Prove it. Silence, then the phrase, Cairo goes dark at midnight. The same code Ren had carried before. Lissa opened the door. The Admiral stood there, rain-soaked, older than the night before. His eyes carried exhaustion but also urgency. He stepped inside quickly, closing the door behind him. They're closer than you think, he said without preamble. Your comms are burned. Your safe house is compromised. Odessa isn't secure. Lissa's eyes narrowed, specter and wraith. Thorne's face said everything before his words did. Gone. The weight of the word pressed like stone. Wren's breath caught, Talon's fists clenched. Lissa simply nodded once, her eyes hollow. "Then it's just us," she said. Thorn's gaze was heavy. "Then you'd better move fast, because Axiom isn't just hunting you, they're deploying Scimitar." The storm outside roared. And in that storm, Lissa felt it, time running out. That night she couldn't sleep, not because of fear. Phantom 7 had learned to live with fear long ago. It was something else, the weight of choice, the cost of ghosts. She sat alone near the window, watching the rain streak down glass, the thunder rolling like distant artillery. Wren approached quietly, hesitant. She stood for a long moment before speaking. "Why you?" Lissa turned her head slightly. "What?" "Why do you keep surviving?" Wren asked softly. "All of them, Dashel, Ara, Spectre, Wraith, even the others in Tyrion, but you're still here. Why?" The question cut deeper than any blade. Lissa looked back out the window. She didn't answer immediately. She couldn't. Finally, her voice came low, barely more than a whisper. "Because ghosts don't get to choose." Morning would come, plans would form, battles would follow. But that night, as the storm raged, one truth lingered like smoke. Phantom 7 was no longer a team. It was a remnant. And remnants could still burn. Why did Odessa's dawn feel like the edge of a blade? The storm had passed, but the streets were slick with its memory. Gray clouds hung low over the port, the sea restless, gulls circling in chaotic arcs. Inside the warehouse, 4 figures remained. 4 against an invisible army. 4 against betrayal. Talon checked weapons in silence, his movements hard, mechanical, his rage barely contained beneath his scarred hands. Admiral Thorn sat hunched at the table, his shoulders heavy with secrets. Wren stood near the door, restless, uncertain, still clutching a weapon that felt heavier every hour. And Lissa, she stood at the window, her gaze fixed on the horizon, her reflection fractured by streaks of rain across the glass. She hadn't spoken since Thorn delivered the news, Spectre and Wraith gone. Erased. Her silence filled the room more than words could. Finally, Talon broke it. His voice was gravel, low and harsh. "We can't keep running. We're rats in a maze. They close a door, we scurry to the next. That ends now." Wren turned to him. "You mean strike back?" His eyes burned. "I mean hunt before we're all dead." Lissa turned then slowly, her expression unreadable, but her voice carried weight. "And if that's what they want?" Talon frowned. "What are you saying?" "They want us to surface, to fight back, to reveal ourselves. Every time we move, they know. Every step, they're waiting." Her gaze shifted to Thorn. "Why is that, Admiral?" The room froze. Thorn looked up, his weathered face tight, but his eyes didn't waver. "You think I led them here?" "I think someone did." Her tone was calm, not accusing, yet sharper than any blade. Every safe house, every channel burned. Wren's heart raced. She looked between them, tension rising like pressure in a sealed room. Talon's massive frame loomed closer, his fists curling. "You brought us here," he growled. Thorn's voice hardened. "I've spent my career cleaning the messes no one else would admit existed. Phantom 7 was one of those. You think I'd betray the very operators I bled to protect?" Lissa's eyes narrowed. Betrayal doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it looks like loyalty. For a long moment, silence pressed heavy. The storm outside had passed, but the storm inside was only beginning. Wren finally spoke, her voice softer but steady. "If it's not him, then someone else has access. Someone close enough to know your movements, your safe houses, your codes. Someone who was always watching." The words cut deeper than gunfire, because they were true. Lissa closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with renewed focus. "Then we stop running, we draw them out, we hit them first." By noon, a plan had formed. The data Spectre left behind included more than fragments. Hidden in the encryption was a thread, a financial trail, subtle but deliberate. Payments routed through shell companies, ending in Odessa, a warehouse near the docks marked as a logistics hub for Axiom Strategic. Talon traced it on the map, his finger pressing hard enough to tear the paper. That's where they are, and if they're running Scimitar through this port, we burn it before it moves. Wren studied the map, her heart pounding. She wasn't Phantom 7, not really, but here she was, seated at their table, included in their war. How many do you think will be inside? Enough, Talon said darkly. Too many, Lissa corrected. Her eyes moved across the map, calculating, always calculating. We don't fight them head-on, we hit their weakness. Spectre left us this trail for a reason. Thorn leaned forward, which means the hub isn't just logistics, it's command, files, tech, the kind of evidence we can't get anywhere else. Wren swallowed. So we go in, 4 against an army. Lissa's gaze locked on hers. Not 4 ghosts, that's the difference. They'll expect a fight, they won't expect silence. The sun was sinking by the time they reached the docks. The warehouse loomed against the gray horizon, cranes frozen in place, shipping containers stacked like walls. Guards moved casually near entrances, too professional to be locals, too sharp to be complacent. From the shadows of an alley, they watched. Talon adjusted his rifle, his jaw tight. Too many to slip past. Lissa shook her head. We don't slip past, we slip through. Quiet, fast, no traces. She looked at Wren. You stay on Overwatch. If we're compromised, you get out. You get this data to someone who can burn Axiom. Wren's throat tightened. You mean leave you? Yes, Lissa's tone was firm, unyielding. That's your role, survive, carry the truth. Wren wanted to argue, but the look in Lissa's eyes stopped her. This wasn't debate, this was order. The infiltration was a dance. Lissa moved first, her body blending with shadows, her footsteps soundless on wet steel. Talon followed, heavier but precise, a predator cloaked in muscle and scars. Thorn brought up the rear, slower but steady, his presence a reminder that even ghosts needed anchors. Wren climbed higher, scaling rusted scaffolding until she reached the vantage point of a crane. From there, her view widened, the dock spread beneath her like a chessboard. She steadied her borrowed rifle, her breath shallow. She wasn't a sniper. She wasn't trained for this, but she would not fail them. Through her scope, she tracked Lissa and Talon as they slipped along the edge of containers, moving with inhuman coordination. She realized then, Phantom 7 didn't communicate like others. No signals, no words, just instinct. Years of operating as one body, one mind. Even broken, they moved as if the team was still whole. Her chest ached watching it, all mixed with sorrow. Then her scope caught movement. 2 guards converging, their paths intersecting directly ahead of Lissa. Wren's finger tightened on the trigger. She hesitated, breath catching. If she fired, the noise would give them away. If she didn't, they'd be discovered. Her heart pounded, the choice pressed heavy. She didn't fire. And she didn't need to. Lissa moved like smoke, stepping into the blind spot between them. A knife flashed, silent and clean. 2 bodies lowered into shadow. Wren exhaled, trembling. She lowered her rifle briefly, ashamed of her hesitation. But when she looked back, Lissa was already gone, moving deeper into the labyrinth. Inside, the warehouse hummed with low light and quiet danger. Stacks of crates, rows of servers, the faint glow of screens. Talon crouched near a console, eyes scanning. Encrypted, layered. Lissa knelt beside him, inserting Spectre's drive. The code came alive, dancing across screens, unraveling locks. Thorn kept watch, his pistol steady, his face lined with the strain of years. Files appeared, names, transactions, deployment orders, and then schematics. Scimitar. Lissa's chest tightened. The diagrams were unmistakable. Tyrann reborn, streamlined, perfected. No longer a failed experiment, but a weapon ready for use. Her hand hovered over the keyboard, trembling despite her control. She had lived with this ghost for years, convincing herself it had died with Tyrion. Now it breathed again. "Download everything," she whispered. Talon's hands moved fast, transferring files, burning duplicates, corrupting backups. Evidence. Enough to expose, enough to fight back. And then the alarm shrieked. Red lights blazed across the warehouse. Doors clanged shut. The hum of boots filled the air. They had been waiting. "Move," Lissa barked, grabbing the drive as Talon ripped cables from the servers. Gunfire erupted. Shadows surged from every doorway, rifles raised, voices shouting in languages Ren couldn't place. From her vantage point, she saw it all. The swarm of enemies closing in, the flashes of muzzle fire, the sudden explosion of chaos. Her breath caught, her fingers squeezed the trigger. This time she didn't hesitate. The shot rang out, one attacker collapsing, then another. Her shots weren't perfect, but they bought seconds. Seconds Phantom 7 turned into survival. Talon moved like a storm, his rifle spitting fire, his body a wall of fury. Lissa cut through the chaos with precision, her movements sharp, surgical, every round placed with purpose. Thorn stayed low, covering angles, calm even in fire. But they were surrounded, outnumbered, overwhelmed. Ren's voice cracked through her earpiece, trembling but fierce. "You have to get out now." Lissa's reply was flat, steady. "We don't run." And then the explosion ripped through the far wall, a wave of fire and steel. Containers toppled. The roof groaned. Chaos split the battlefield. Through the smoke, Lissa saw them. Figures in black, masked, disciplined. Not locals, not contractors, something else. Axiom's hunters. The very ones who had been erasing Phantom 7. And they were here for her. The firefight tore the warehouse apart. Steel screaming, flames rising, gunfire deafening. But beneath it all, one truth burned clear. This was no longer survival. This was war. Why did the air taste like ash before the fire even spread? The warehouse shook with the force of the explosion, steel groaning as flames licked across toppled crates. Sparks showered down like a cruel kind of snow. The sound was deafening. Gunfire, shouts, the metallic shriek of collapsing girders. Lissa didn't flinch. She moved through it like water, her body remembering before her mind could. Each burst of fire was controlled, each step calculated. She had lived too many nights like this, nights that felt like endings. Talon roared through the chaos, his rifle hammering. He was less subtle, less silent, but just as deadly. Where Lissa cut with a scalpel, Talon smashed with a hammer. Together, they carved a path through bodies and smoke, their rhythm as old as the team they'd once been. Admiral Thorn stayed lower, firing measured shots, his decades of command in every steady movement. He was Phantom 7, but he carried the discipline of someone who'd sent too many men into fire. And Ren trembled high above in her perch, her rifle pressed to her shoulder, her finger tight on the trigger. Her world narrowed to the scope, the crosshairs, the small breaths between shots. She wasn't trained for this, not really, but she was here. She had chosen. She fired. One man fell, then another. Each shot echoed through her body, not triumph but shock. The recoil bruised her shoulder, but the weight that bruised her heart was heavier. These weren't silhouettes on a range. These were men, breathing, moving, fighting. And she was killing them. Her stomach twisted, bile rising in her throat. She whispered to herself, words no one could hear. Don't think, just survive." The hunters closed in. Axiom's finest, faceless behind masks, their movements cold, rehearsed, efficient. This wasn't chaos to them. It was choreography. Lissa saw it instantly. The angles, the spacing, the way they cut off exits without even looking at one another. She knew that discipline. She had lived it. These weren't mercenaries. These were soldiers trained, funded, and unleashed without conscience. Her chest tightened with recognition. Phantom 7 had been ghosts. These men were reapers. "Move left," she shouted. dragging Talon behind a wall of containers as gunfire shredded the air they'd just vacated. Sparks rained down, smoke filling her lungs. "Trap," Talon growled. His face was streaked with sweat and soot. "They don't want us dead yet, they want us cornered." Lissa knew he was right. Every movement of the hunters said the same thing. Contain, press, choke. They weren't in a fight, they were in an execution. Thorne's voice cut through. "We need that drive out of here, that's all that matters." Lissa's hand went instinctively to her jacket where the small device pressed against her chest. Evidence of scimitar, proof of betrayal, proof of truth. Her mind spun. If they died here, the truth died too. She looked up, her eyes finding Ren's across the chaos. Ren's face was pale, her eyes wide, but her rifle didn't shake anymore. She had found her rhythm, each shot a little steadier than the last. "Ren," Lissa shouted, her voice breaking through the roar. "If we fall, you run, you take it, you live." Ren's head shook violently, even as her finger squeezed another shot. "Not without you." Lissa's jaw tightened. Ghosts didn't get to choose, but the living did. The hunters surged again. Grenades rolled across the floor, smoke erupting in choking plumes. Visibility vanished. The warehouse became a tomb of shadows and echoes. Lissa dropped low, instincts kicking in. She felt more than saw, listening for footfalls, for the hiss of breath in the smoke. Her knife flashed once, silent, precise. A man fell with a wet gurgle. Talon barreled through another, his rifle empty now, his massive hands snapping a neck with brutal efficiency. But for everyone they dropped, two more closed in. From above, Ren's scope was blind in the smoke. She switched to instinct, firing at muzzle flashes, at shadows. Each shot rang like judgment in her ears. And then she froze. One of the hunters had broken away, moving up scaffolding, coming for her. Her breath caught, her hands shook. She swung her rifle, but he was faster, closer, a shadow rising in the smoke, weapon raised. "Lissa," she screamed before she could stop herself. Lissa heard it, her blood running cold. She couldn't see Ren, couldn't reach her, but instinct drove her. She sprinted toward the scaffolding, smoke curling around her, bullets sparking inches from her body. She saw him then, the hunter closing in on Ren, rifle raised, the moment stretched thin. Her weapon was empty, no time to reload, no time to aim. She hurled herself upward, grabbing the scaffolding, her body pulling into motion before thought. Her knife flashed, steel against flesh, blood spraying across steel beams. The hunter fell. Ren gasped, her rifle clattering against metal as she scrambled back. Lissa looked at her, chest heaving, eyes blazing through the smoke. "Never freeze." Ren nodded, trembling, her breath ragged. "Yes, ma'am." "Not ma'am," Lissa snapped. "Survivor." The battle raged. Minutes felt like hours. The warehouse burned around them, flames turning steel into a furnace. Talon fought like a beast cornered, each strike fueled by fury and loss. Thorne fired until his pistol clicked empty, then switched to another, his old hand steady even as sweat and soot streaked his face. And Lissa, she became what the call sign had always meant. Phantom, a blur in smoke and fire, a shadow that moved where no one expected, a ghost that struck without warning, without mercy. But ghosts bled too. A round tore across her side, hot fire lancing through her ribs. She stumbled, her vision flashing white. Talon caught her arm, hauling her back behind cover. "You're hit." "Not enough to stop me," she hissed, pressing her hand against the wound. Blood seeped through her fingers, but her eyes stayed hard. Ren saw it, her chest clenched. The woman who had seemed unbreakable, untouchable, bleeding, fragile, human. It scared her more than the gunfire. But it also lit something inside her. If Lissa could bleed and still fight, then so could she. The hunters pressed harder, their discipline relentless. It was only a matter of time before numbers overwhelmed skill. Thorne's voice cut through, harsh, commanding. "Extraction now." "No extraction," Lissa snapped. Not until we burn this place. Talon's eyes met hers. He knew what she meant. He nodded once. Wren's breath caught. Burn it, we'll be trapped. Better trapped than erased, Lissa said coldly. They planted charges fast, working through the chaos. Talon placed them along the servers, the crates. Lissa staggered once, blood loss slowing her but pushed forward. Wren covered angles, her hands steady now, her fear burned into resolve. The hunters realized too late. Shouts echoed, gunfire intensified. Go, Talon bellowed, dragging Wren toward the exit as flames spread higher. Lissa stayed behind for one final moment. Her hand pressed against the detonator. Her breath came heavy, blood soaking her jacket. Her eyes swept the warehouse one last time. She saw the faces of her team in the smoke. Dashel, Ara, Spectre, Wraith. Ghosts. Her voice was a whisper no one heard. This time it ends with us. She pressed the trigger. The explosion tore through Odessa's docks, a roar that shook the sea itself. Fire blossomed into the night, consuming steel and secrets alike. Crates shattered. Flames painted the sky orange. The shockwave hurled them into the street, bodies slamming against wet concrete. Wren gasped, coughing smoke, ears ringing. Talon pulled her up, his massive body shielding hers from falling debris. Lissa staggered, blood running down her side, her vision spinning. But she was alive, still alive. Behind them the warehouse burned, collapsing into itself, a pyre of secrets and betrayal. They had destroyed Scimitar's hub. But in her chest, Lissa knew the truth. The weapon wasn't gone, not yet. And neither was the hunt. As they fled into the rain-soaked night, sirens wailed across the city. Shadows still moved in the alleys. Odessa wasn't escape. It was only survival. Wren stumbled beside Lissa, her voice raw. How do you keep going? Lissa looked at her, her eyes hollow, weary but unbroken. Because stopping means they win. That night, as they vanished into Odessa's labyrinth, one truth settled like ash on their skin. They weren't just ghosts anymore. They were the last line between silence and the truth. And ghosts could still burn. Why did survival feel more like loss than victory? The night after Odessa burned, the three of them, four if you counted Thorn, moved through the city like shadows. Sirens wailed in the distance. Fire still glowed faintly on the horizon, and every step carried the weight of a battle survived but not won. They had destroyed the hub, they had escaped the net, but they hadn't escaped the truth. Scimitar still lived. The safe house this time was no more than a crumbling apartment above a shuttered bakery. The smell of ash and flour mixed in the walls, a bitter reminder of both hunger and ruin. Talon sealed the door with furniture, every muscle in his massive frame still taut with fury. His eyes burned with something beyond exhaustion, rage at enemies he couldn't yet reach. Wren sat in the corner, her rifle across her knees. Her hands shook when she thought no one was looking. Her mind replayed every shot she had fired, every body that had dropped. The recoil was gone, but the weight remained. Thorn leaned against the wall, silent, older than the room itself. He had led missions, toppled regimes, buried truths, but even he had no words for what Odessa had cost them. And Lissa. She sat on the edge of the bed, jacket peeled away, blood seeping through a makeshift bandage wrapped tight across her ribs. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady, fixed on something none of them could see. Wren finally broke the silence. That wasn't survival, she whispered. That was slaughter, and it's not over. They'll come again. Her voice cracked, raw with youth and truth. We can't win like this. We're just 3 people, 4 maybe. They're an army. Talon's jaw clenched. Then we make them bleed. Enough cuts, even an army falls. Wren looked at him, frustration rising. You think this is about body counts, about winning firefights. You didn't see what I saw in that warehouse. Files, schematics. Scimitar isn't just soldiers, it's... She shook her head, unable to finish. Lissa's voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. It's precision genocide. The words froze Wren's blood. She stared at Lissa wide-eyed. What do you mean? Lissa's gaze finally left the floor. Her eyes met Wren's, heavy with memory. Tyrann wasn't just a failed experiment. It wasn't about targeting terrorists or hostile leaders. It was about control. Imagine a system that can select who lives and who dies, not by battlefield, not by chance, but by blood, by code, by what's written in your cells. Wren's stomach turned. Genetic markers. Exactly. Lissa's tone carried no triumph, only fatigue. That's what Scimitar is. The next evolution, cleaner, faster. They won't send drones. They won't send soldiers. They'll just erase people. Quietly. Entire populations if they choose, and they'll call it progress. The silence that followed was suffocating. Talon spat to the side, rage in his voice. Then we burn it. We finish what we should have finished at Tyrann. Wren looked at him, then at Lissa. But how? You said it yourself. They know where you are. They're always one step ahead. Someone's feeding them. Her eyes shifted toward Thorn. The Admiral's face darkened. You think I'd hand you to them? I don't know what to think, Wren admitted, her voice breaking. All I know is everywhere you go, they're waiting. Lissa's gaze sharpened, but her tone remained controlled. She's not wrong. If they know our every move, then either you're compromised, Admiral, or one of us is. The air thickened. Talon's massive frame leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Wren's breath quickened, her fingers tightening on her weapon. Thorn's voice rose, steel under gravel. I've spent my life protecting the men and women who fought in shadows because no one else would. You think I'd betray you? You think I'd watch you bleed just to serve them? No one thinks they're the traitor, Lissa said softly. Her words landed like stones in the dark. For a long time, no one spoke. The storm outside filled the silence, rain striking glass like whispered warnings. Finally, Wren's voice broke again, softer, almost pleading. Then who do we trust? Lissa leaned back, wincing against her wound. Her eyes closed briefly, then opened, calm but hollow. No one, that's how you stay alive. Wren's throat tightened. She looked at her, at the scars, at the exhaustion carved into her face. But that's not living. Lissa didn't answer. Later, as the others slept, or pretended to, Wren sat awake, her knees pulled tight, her weapon across her lap. She watched Lissa in the dim light. The older woman's breathing was slow, steady, but her face wasn't at peace. Even in rest, her brow was furrowed, her hand twitching occasionally toward the knife by her side. Wren thought of her father, of the man who had whispered warnings about betrayal, about Phantom 7, about trusting them if she ever found them. And she wondered if he had carried the same scars. She wanted to ask Lissa about him, wanted to ask what her father had truly been a part of, but the words stayed trapped because she was afraid of the answer. The next morning, Odessa wore the scars of fire. Smoke still clung to the air. Soldiers patrolled the docks, though none of them wore insignias Wren recognized. They needed to move. Talon scouted first, his massive frame blending with surprising ease into alleys and shadows. Lissa followed, slower now, her wound pulling at her with every step. She didn't complain. She never would. Wren stayed close, her eyes darting to every window, every shadow. The world felt heavier now, sharper. She could no longer pretend she was a soldier in training. She was in it, and there was no going back. Thorn trailed behind, slower but steady. His age showed in his steps, but his eyes burned with something that hadn't dimmed, a purpose forged in secrets too heavy to share. They regrouped in an abandoned train yard on the city's edge. Rusting cars lined the tracks, weeds breaking through old gravel. The place smelled of oil and decay, but it was quiet, too quiet. Talon checked the perimeter, his massive frame moving like a shadow. Wren scanned rooftops, her hands trembling only slightly now. Thorn stood still, his gaze scanning the horizon. And Lissa. She sat on a broken rail, her hand pressed against her ribs, her eyes locked on the horizon where smoke still rose from the docks. Her voice, when it came, was low, almost to herself. Every time we fight back, more of us die. Every time we survive, we carry more ghosts. Ren stepped closer, hesitant. Then why keep fighting? Lissa looked at her, her eyes tired but steady, because silence is worse. Her gaze drifted back to the horizon. The world will never know Phantom 7. Our names, our faces, our scars, they'll never make the history books. But if Scimitar rises, if Tyrion repeats, then the only thing the world will remember is the silence. And silence kills more than bullets ever could. Ren felt her chest tighten. She wanted to argue. She wanted to say that it wasn't fair, that one team couldn't carry the weight of stopping something so vast. But she saw it in Lissa's eyes. This wasn't choice. This was duty, a duty that had already stolen too much. And for the first time, Ren understood. Phantom 7 didn't fight because they wanted to. They fought because no one else would. The plan ahead was simple in words, impossible in practice. Find Axiom's command. Find the architect of Scimitar. Cut off the head of the snake before the weapon could be unleashed. Talon prepared weapons in silence. Ren studied maps, committing streets to memory. Thorn contacted old channels, pulling strings he hadn't touched in years. And Lissa. She closed her eyes for just a moment. Behind them she saw the faces again. Dashel, Ara, Spectre, Wraith. And one thought echoed. Fewer than there should be. The hunt wasn't over. It was only beginning. Why did the silence before the final battle feel louder than the war itself? The train yard lay abandoned, but none of them believed it was safe. The shadows stretched long across rusted steel, the scent of oil and rain mixing in the air. Talon crouched with his rifle across his knees. Ren checked and rechecked her weapon, her hands steadier now than they had been in Odessa. Admiral Thorn leaned against a rail car, his eyes distant, haunted. And Lissa sat apart, her back against a broken beam, her breathing shallow from the wound that still bled beneath her jacket. She ignored the pain. Pain had long ago become an old companion. What she couldn't ignore was the weight in her chest. Not just blood, not just exhaustion, memory. Ghosts pressing down, whispering names she'd sworn never to forget. Dashel, Ara, Spectre, Wraith. And now, Talon, Ren herself. The last pieces of Phantom 7. The plan wasn't written down. It couldn't be. It lived in their eyes, in the unspoken rhythm between them. They would find the architect behind Axiom Strategic, the one who had resurrected Tyrion under a new name, the one who was erasing them, one by one. Spectre's drive had left breadcrumbs. An offshore compound near Constanta, disguised as a private security training facility. In truth, it was the command center of Scimitar. Head of the snake, Talon muttered as he studied the map. We cut it, everything else dies. Ren looked at him, then at Lissa. And if it does? Lissa's voice was steady. Then we don't stop cutting. The approach was quiet, too quiet. The compound rose from the coastline like a scar, concrete walls, guard towers, floodlights sweeping the dark sea. It was no fortress, but it didn't need to be. It had money, soldiers, technology, the kind of protection secrecy buys. They slipped through the cliffs, the roar of waves masking their movement. Ren's heart hammered in her chest. Every breath felt too loud. Every step felt like it might be the one that gave them away. But Lissa moved ahead like she belonged to the shadows. Talon followed, massive but precise. Thorn trailed, slower but his presence steady. Ren whispered into her earpiece. 3 guards at the south gate. 2 exposed, Talon muttered. Then we take the water, Lissa said. They slid down the rocks, the sea cold against their skin as they swam beneath the wall's shadow. Ren's teeth chattered, but she kept her grip on the rifle. When they surfaced inside, the night pressed heavier. The compound wasn't asleep, it was waiting. They moved through corridors of steel and concrete, each one more sterile than the last. Computers hummed. Screens glowed faintly. The deeper they went, the more it felt less like a base and more like a tomb. Wren whispered, "Why so quiet?" Lissa's reply was grim, "Because they know we're here." The room they entered was cavernous, a command center. Screens lined the walls, maps and schematics flickering in the dark. At the center stood a man in a suit, his back to them, hands clasped behind him, calm, expecting. "Lissa Vaughn," he said without turning. His voice was smooth, steady, almost polite. "Phantom 7's last ghost." Talon raised his rifle. "Turn around." The man obeyed. His face was sharp, clean, forgettable in its perfection. A man designed to disappear into boardrooms and corridors of power. "I warned them you survive," he said calmly. "I told them ghosts don't die so easily, but they didn't listen, and here you are." Lissa's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" He smiled faintly. "Names don't matter, men like me exist between them. What matters is purpose, and my purpose is Scimitar." Wren's voice broke through, trembling with fury. "You killed my father." The man tilted his head slightly, studying her. General Wren was inconvenient. He asked too many questions. He believed loyalty meant truth. That's a dangerous belief. Her hands tightened on her rifle. "You murdered him." "I preserved order," the man replied. His tone was cold, clinical. "As I will preserve it again. Scimitar is the future. No more drawn-out wars, no more chaos. Select the threats, eliminate them, and the world stays clean, efficient, controlled." "Controlled by who?" Lissa asked quietly. He looked at her, unflinching. "By those strong enough to do what must be done." Her chest tightened. The arrogance, the certainty, the same kind of certainty that had turned Tyrann into a massacre. She stepped forward, her voice low but sharp. "I've seen your future, I've buried it, and I won't let it rise again." The man's smile faded. "Then you'll die here." The lights cut. The room exploded into chaos. Gunfire ripped through the dark. Shadows surged from hidden alcoves, Axiom operatives, armed, masked, disciplined. The final hunt had begun. Talon roared, his rifle blazing, his body a wall of fury as he shielded the others. Wren dropped low, firing bursts, her breath steady despite the storm. Thorn moved slower, more deliberate, every shot purposeful. And Lissa, she became phantom, again, always. Her movements were sharp, precise, her body flowing through shadows, each strike fueled by memory, by ghosts, by the weight of everything they had lost. But the hunters were endless. For everyone that fell, two more pressed in. Wren's voice cracked. "We can't hold them." "Yes, we can," Lissa snapped, her voice steel. "Because we don't have another choice." The battle stretched into eternity. Bullets ricocheted, flames licked across screens, the room collapsing into chaos. And then Talon fell. A burst of gunfire ripped through his chest, staggering him backward. He dropped to one knee, blood pouring, his massive frame trembling. "No," Wren screamed, firing wildly, rage and grief tearing through her. Talon's eyes found Lissa. He smiled faintly, blood on his teeth. "Finish it." And then he collapsed. Lissa's chest tightened, but she didn't break. She couldn't. Not now. She pressed forward, cutting through the chaos until she reached the console at the center of the room. The architect stood there still, calm even as the world burned around him. "You can't stop it," he said. "Scimitar is bigger than me, bigger than you. Kill me and another will take my place." Lissa's voice was a whisper, raw and final. "Maybe, but you won't be here to see it." Her knife flashed. His body fell. The alarm screamed. The compound shook. Charges Talon had planted earlier burned through steel and circuitry, fire spreading fast. "Wren, Thorn, out!" Lissa shouted, grabbing the drive from the console. They fled through smoke and flame, the roar of explosions chasing them. Lissa staggered, her wound bleeding freely now, her strength waning. Ren grabbed her arm, pulling, refusing to let her fall. "Come on, don't you dare stop now." The night air hit them like salvation as they burst from the compound, flames consuming it behind them. The sea roared against the cliffs, reflecting fire like blood. They had done it, the architect was dead, Scimitar's hub destroyed. But the cost? On the cliffs, Lissa collapsed to her knees, blood soaking her side. Ren dropped beside her, panic in her eyes. "Stay with me, please stay with me." Lissa's breath came ragged, her hand pressed against Ren's cheek, steady despite the blood. "You're stronger than you think, stronger than you know, don't waste it." Her eyes drifted toward the horizon, where dawn was breaking, pale light cutting through smoke. Her voice was soft. "Ghosts don't get to choose, but the living do." Ren's tears mixed with rain. "Don't leave me." Lissa's lips curved faintly. "I'm already gone." Her hand slipped, her eyes closed. And Phantom 7 was one ghost fewer. They buried her on the cliffs at dawn, the sea crashing below, the sky painted in fire and light. No name, no stone, just earth and silence. Thorn stood with his head bowed, the weight of too many secrets pressing his frame. Ren stood stiff, tears burning, her hand resting on the rifle Lissa had left behind. "Now what?" Ren whispered. Thorn's voice was quiet, gravel in the wind. "Now we tell the truth." The world would never know her name, not truly. But somewhere, in corridors of power and in whispers of soldiers, one call sign would remain. Phantom 7. And in that silence, in that ghost of memory, lived the truth she had carried to the end. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.